The discovery of a mass grave with the bodies of 215 children at the Kamloops Residential School sent shockwaves right across this country, but it was not really a surprise to Indigenous communities. Many Canadians are realizing that there's a gap in their education and understanding of what has gone on, and they want to learn. Indigenous activist Michelle Robinson joins us to talk about how we can do just that. Michelle, the information is out there. What are you hoping people will do?
My hope is that people will start putting the effort towards learning about this topic and the systemic barriers that are against Indigenous today, and doing reflection. I think a lot of people don't recognize their anti-Indigenous bias, whether it's a neighbor, a friend. I know lots of people say, oh, I have a friend that's Native. But do you actually honor who they are? Or are you that racist friend they tolerate? And I think that a lot of Canadians would be shocked. We just tolerate your racism in a lot of cases. And I think that Canadians need to really do self reflection on anti Indigenous bias that they perpetuate, as well as the system, and start focusing on these issues. There's 94 calls to action, 231 calls to justice, over 400 recommendations from the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. That the information is out there. It's publicly available. There are Indigenous podcasts, there are Indigenous media, Indigenous reporters, Indigenous documentaries, Indigenous books. There's actually no excuse at this point. It's willful ignorance at this point.
You go so far as to actually lead a group when it comes to a book club. Can you tell us about that and what people are learning through it?
Yeah, so an Indigenous centered book club is actually from an Indigenous perspective, as opposed to it being a Canadian perspective, which has been the narrative up to this moment. And I think what happens is that people can read something but not understand the gravity to it unless we dissect it. There is also a settlers book club, and I would actually just encourage anybody to start a book club, or start having these conversations, because just as there was that turning point with George Floyd, where people had to do evaluation of their anti-Blackness bias that they had, myself included, a lot of people have to start really questioning their anti-Indigenous bias. And that's the point of the book club. That's the point of going through these topics, is to really dissect that. Because, even for myself, on my white side of the family, I have a great grandfather that served in World War II. We were fighting Nazis. I mean, here at home, my Indigenous side was barely surviving. So, that, like, how we as Canadians have to make peace with that. I mean, I'm struggling as well, and we have to work together at trying to do this. And, I could just go right back to the treaties, honoring the treaties of equality. Right now, we do not have equality. We have systemic oppression. And I'd like to start working at dismantling systemic oppression.
What can people actually just do in Calgary? This is a great month for them to actually learn and grow on a real local level.
Yeah, June is kind of our month to shine. We have tons of events that are free and open to everyone. And I think there is when an anti-Indigenous bias to assume, oh, that's for them. And that's the problem, that we need Canadians to see this is for all of us, and that Canadians need to learn from Indigenous, hear our voices, let us lead these conversations. And, here in Calgary, we have an Indigenous book club, we have a settler book club, we have a group, a reconciliation action group, and we were the group that really worked towards trying to get the Langevin School name done. But there are many other initiatives from great Indigenous leaders locally that are happening. And I just encourage people to start following locally our Indigenous folks, and, partaking in those events, and coming out to our book clubs. And there's a website, it's actually called Calgary Aboriginal Awareness Week. And on it has a ton of different listings that are happening right here, right now.
Thanks so much for your time, Michelle Robinson.